So the Ezekiel 37 prophecy was fulfilled. It happened. However, there were people who didn't like this development. They were surrounded by Arab neighbors. There were 600,000 Jews in the promised land by this time, but they were surrounded by 42 million hostile Arab neighbors. They declared statehood on May 14, 1948. The Arabs launched a war against the fledgling state the next day, May 15, 1948. The world thought, well, we did what we could. We can't go over there and defend them. We know what's going to happen. They're going to be wiped out. However, they weren't. For someone fought for them. When finally a ceasefire was declared in 1949, not only did they have the territory given to them by the United Nations, but they actually had been victorious and enlarged their borders. And it was at that time that they owned half of the city of Jerusalem, West Jerusalem. They did not control the old part of Jerusalem containing the Temple Mount. That still was under the control of the nation of Jordan. Well, that's not the end of the story, because in 56 there was another campaign, and then finally came the War of 1967, and what an incredible war it was. In 1967, Nasser of Egypt decided that it was time to forever eradicate the nation of Israel from the face of the earth. He started by blockading the Straits of Tiran, which was one of Israel's access to international waters. Of course, this is known worldwide as an act of war. Because Israel realized that these encroachments were not going to stop and that the Arabs were bent on war. On June the 4th of 1967, Israel launched a pre-dawn raid, caught all of Egypt's planes on the ground, and destroyed the entire Egyptian Air Force. Israel also attacked the Golan Heights in the north, because for many years now, the people living in Galilee below the Golan Heights could not sleep safely with their children. They had to sleep in bunkers because continually the Syrians were shooting down upon them. And they would watch continually as there were different fatalities, and some of them lost their families. They said, no more of this. So they struggled up the Golan Heights, and they reclaimed the Golan Heights. The Prime Minister of Israel placed a very important phone call to King Hussein of Jordan. King Hussein was the most moderate Arab leader, supposedly. They said to him, King Hussein, we know you did not pick this fight. We didn't either. If you'll stay out of the war, we will not attack you. You will be safe. However, Nasser of Egypt had also called King Hussein and lied to him, saying, we are experiencing victory on every front. We are 1 hour away from Tel Aviv. We will be there shortly. Jump in with us. King Hussein could not resist. He could not stand aside while his Arab brethren fought the Jewish enemy. He jumped into the war. Well, that was not a good decision, because shortly Israel drove all the way to the Jordan River, the area called the West Bank, the biblical area of Judea, Samaria, and they reunited the city of Jerusalem. They took the Temple Mount area. And what a day that was when that happened. When the Jewish people walked on the Temple Mount, the Arabs had fled. My friend Gershon Solomon was there. He told me about it. He said it was so incredible. When the fighting stopped, the last shot was fired, the Arabs had fled. We suddenly find, here we are, after 2,000 years. And he said, we all begin to weep. He said, one minute we were fighting and killing, and the next minute we were weeping like little kids. He said there was such an awesome feeling in the place. We knew that we were back to Jerusalem. We've been banished from there for 2,000 years. We're back to Jerusalem. He said, but the astounding thing was there were many Jewish boys fighting there that didn't believe in God, because they'd been raised on the kibbutzim. And the kibbutz was a place where they were supposed to have pure communism, so they taught all their kids there was no God. And yet all these young boys, 19, 20, 21 years of age, that were even from the kibbutz, they are weeping. And Gershon Solomon told me, I said to some of them, why are you weeping? You don't believe the Bible. You don't believe this is a special place. Why are you weeping? They said, we don't know. We can't help it. There's a special feeling here. Now, it's a long story. It's an incredible story. Gershon Solomon saw the restoration of the Temple Mount and the recapturing of most of the land that God promised to Abraham way back 4,000 years ago now. He saw this as the war of redemption. However, spiritual people were not in charge of the nation of Israel because the nation of Israel had not voted spiritual people into office. Consequently, they did not do what they should have done. They should have torn down the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock and rid the Mount of God where God chose to place his name. They should have rid that mountain of the name of Allah and the name of Muhammad. They should have gotten rid of that. And they should have restored the place to the stature that God intended for it to be. But they didn't. There were some of them that wanted to. Rabbi Shlomo Goren was the chaplain of the Israeli Defense Forces during the war. And what a spiritual firebrand he was. As he saw the soldiers standing on the Temple Mount and basking in the sunlight of this marvelous victory, he went to the general in charge, General Uzi. And he said, Uzi, right now, take this dynamite. He had the dynamite. Take it. Blow up the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Blow up the Dome of the Rock. It's time to rebuild our temple. God has brought us back to our promised land. And he's brought us back to the place where the first temple stood and the second temple stood. It's time to build our third temple. And General Uzi said, Rabbi, be quiet. I cannot do that. He said, you'll go down in history if you'll do this. And General Uzi said, I'll go down in history anyway, Rabbi. And when Rabbi Shlomo Goren persisted, General Uzi said, Rabbi Goren, if you don't be quiet right now, I will take you to jail. The rabbi bowed his head and walked sadly away. This story was not known until about 3 years ago because General Uzi confided it to Haaretz newspaper in Israel on the condition that it would not be told until both he and Shlomo Goren were dead. But that's what happened there on that Temple Mount. Gershon Solomon said to me with conviction in his voice, he said, if we would have done what we should have done, we believe Messiah would have come right then. But instead, we have intifada. Instead, the Gentiles are thistles in our eyes. They are thorns in our sides because we did not obey God's voice. We allowed them to stay here and to pollute this land. What an incredible story. From the loss of Jerusalem, full circle, 2,000 years, and all the time, God orchestrating every move. What a history. God said, I will put my name there.